entering its fifth day for the shooter who killed UnitedHealthcare CEO Brian Thompson. Officials with the NYPD say they believe they are making good progress toward identifying the suspect. Investigators continue to comb through the city for evidence and clues, releasing new pictures too.
You are listening to the Roberta Glass True Crime Report, putting the true back in true crime. From New York City, Roberta Glass is now on the record.
Okay. Hey, how is everybody? Wanted to talk today about the gunning down of UnitedHealthcare CEO Brian Thompson in where I live, New York City. And what happened with this suspect? Everybody's looking for him. Getting conflicting stories. Some people are saying that the police have ID'd the suspect. We're going to start from the beginning. Let's go from the beginning. He was gunned down. The CEO was gunned down in the early morning hours of December 4th. And the suspect fled on a bicycle fled on foot, then went on a bicycle through Central Park. And eventually they believe he left town through the George Washington Bridge bus depot, one of the busiest bus depots in the country. So getting conflicting stories as to whether they've ID'd him or not ID'd him. There is a $50,000 reward out for the suspect's identification or other important tips from the FBI, and a $10,000 reward from the police they're offering for tips that lead to the capture of the suspect. It's amazing that they found out as much as they can. Recently, they just found his backpack abandoned in Central Park. All that was in it was a Tommy Hilfiger jacket and Monopoly money. So let's take a listen to the news story on it.
A manhunt is entering its fifth day for the shooter who killed UnitedHealthcare CEO Brian Thompson. Officials with the NYPD say they believe they are making good progress toward identifying the suspect. Investigators continue to comb through the city for evidence and clues, releasing new pictures too. Here's ABC's Chuck Sievertson with the latest.
Investigators searching for the suspected gunman who killed UnitedHealthcare chief Brian Thompson continue to search New York City for new evidence. Friday, police found the missing backpack of the suspect while searching Central Park, the last place he had been seen after the shooting. The backpack only had two items inside, a Tommy Hilfiger jacket and Monopoly money, sources with knowledge of the investigation told ABC News Saturday. Investigators say the suspect, wearing all black and a ski mask, waited until Thompson showed up for an investors' conference before fatally shooting him at point-blank range.
At this time, every indication is that this was a premeditated, pre-planned, targeted attack.
Investigators say the suspect arrived in New York 10 days prior to the shooting on a Greyhound bus and boarded somewhere between Atlanta and Washington, D.C.
It's likely that the investigation, at least looking for individuals who may have had contact with the shooter, will occur within several different states itself.
Investigators and the FBI continue to track the shooter's movements after the Wednesday morning incident and have said that he left the city that day.
Also, what was found close to where the shooting occurred was his water bottle. And what I heard is that they got a smudged fingerprint, which is not much help. But obviously it's his water bottle. I was watching Law and Crime and court TV. And the hosts are going like, okay, so you just, we get the DNA and you match the DNA and there you got the suspect. It doesn't work quite like that. I think we got a little, the CSI effect going with this case. Clearly not everyone's DNA is in a data bank. And even if you are arrested, I don't think very few cases you actually give over your DNA. So unlikely that his DNA is in the data bank. I mean, unless this guy is a career criminal he looks pretty young, before the age of whatever. I don't know. He looks like he's in his 20s. And clearly the most obvious. Yes. So my boyfriend's telling me that when you're arrested, you have to hand over your DNA more than I think. I think that's what's his point. I think that's what his point is. I was shocked though that they said, well, we've been solving these crimes by people who've been voluntarily putting themselves in the database and doing a kind of ancestry back, tracing via ancestry back to who they are. And I believe there's been some challenges and they can't solve some crimes like that anymore. I have not looked into it as if that's just in some states or all over the country. I assume that's something like an ACLU type organization challenge to that kind of solving of crimes, that it's too invasive. I was shocked that they won with that in any state, but okay.
Chuck Severson, ABC News, New York.
Okay, so that'll give you kind of an overview. Okay, so police can ask for your DNA after they arrest you, my boyfriend says. So he's the assistant. So I guess they can ask for it any time. But I mean, look how young he is. I mean, this looks like a very personal type hit, that if you had to guess, the most obvious guess would be that the shooter's family member or himself was denied some kind of coverage that either was really detrimental to his loved ones or to his own well-being or life. I mean, that's the best guess you can guess with something like this. And as the police just put out some new pictures of him in a taxi cab. So he went through Central Park, then he took a cab from the top, Upper West Side to the bus depot. And here are some shots of him in the cab that they released. It's amazing that my point is about the DNA is that so much of this solving of the crimes like this is done with just old-fashioned police work. We like to think that technology is great, DNA is great, but the cops have been just running down, getting these film from all over, and it was amazing how quickly they recovered film of the suspect all over Manhattan. So he was staying in a hostel on the Upper West Side around 103rd Street, the High Hotel Hostel. Not cheap. It's like $136 a night, which, I mean, I looked at, do I still have that open? Let me see if I can pull it up. The images of the High New York City Hostel. One second. Here we go. But what's crazy about this is that you can stay either in the all gender group, like, so it's like bunk housing, like in summer camp with a group of people. You can get a private room, which is like 4 people. So maybe it was like a family. I think they call it a family room. But, or you can stay in the all gender, or you can stay in the all men's area. So you're out of luck if you're a woman, if you want to stay in the hostel and not share your bathroom and sleep quarters with men. Only men get to make that decision there. So this is give you some idea of what it looks like, some of the rooms. So you have these like kind of curtains over your bunk beds. And so you can get like a 10-bed dorm room, 14-bed. I believe he was like in the 6th. He said there were 6 other men in his area. That's what I've heard. And then you can get like a private family room that's down here. Family suite. So that's like the luxury area. But you can see, let's see, we can see some other photos of it. So this is what it looks like. It's a huge building on 103rd Street in Amsterdam on the Upper West Side. Pool table, big kitchen. Rooftop summer. I don't know what that is, but that'll give you some idea of where he was staying, what that was like. And the police gave a briefing right afterwards. Let's take a look at that.
Thank you very much. Good morning, everyone. In Midtown Manhattan early this morning, 50-year-old Brian Thompson, the CEO of UnitedHealthcare, was shot and killed in what appears, at this early stage of our investigation, to be a brazen, targeted attack. This does not appear to be a random act of violence. The victim was in New York City to speak at an investor conference. It appears the suspect was lying in wait for several minutes. And as the victim was walking to the conference hotel, the suspect approached from behind and fired several rounds, striking the victim at least once in the back and at least once in the right calf. Many people passed the suspect, but he appeared to wait for his intended target. The suspect fled, first on foot, then on an e-bike, and was last seen in Central Park on Center Drive early this morning.
And he went to Starbucks right before the shooting. I mean, if that's not the biggest millennial move I've ever heard. I'm going to go to Starbucks before my planned hit. What do you do when they ask you your name? Do you just like John Doe? I don't know. What do you give some fake name? He made the reservation in the hostel with a fake New Jersey ID. So he did plan this out very meticulously. But what's odd is that he carved out, it seems like it was just for himself, words on the casings of the bullets. And it's deny, delay, depose, which is deny and delay are the 2 words that are known in the healthcare industries. This book about the healthcare industry. Depose is not on the title of this book that was, I think, published in 2010 about the healthcare industry and how they deny claims. So his gun jammed and ejected those bullets, but had it not jammed and he had picked up the casings, nobody would know that they were on there. So not a message that he could know that he would leave there for investigators. It might have been something he just did
The
for
victim was
himself.
removed to Roosevelt Hospital, where he was pronounced. We've been in touch with his family, his friends, and his colleagues, and they are very much in our thoughts and prayers at this hour. The full investigative efforts of the New York City Police Department are well underway, and we will not rest until we identify and apprehend the shooter in this case. The women and men of the NYPD take enormous pride in the work that they do each day and each night to drive down crime and violence in our city. Right now, we are asking the public for your help. If you have any information about this case, call Crime Stoppers at 800-577-TIPS. We have increased the reward in this case to $10,000.
You know, what no one's talking about, everybody's talking about how people get angry and frustrated with the healthcare industry when your healthcare coverage denies a claim. And sometimes they can deny ridiculous things that are clearly necessary. And they make what I've heard is that they make the referral, they make the process of trying to get that claim to go through so difficult that it frustrates you. What no one's talking about is the powerlessness feeling how powerless you feel when you're denied a claim. And I think that talking about it with my boyfriend, just that this is like a fantasy. Like, this is why we love gangsters or mobsters, because they can create reality and they're not in these powerless positions, so that they can enact, they can make life seem more fair, right? You can enact your revenge immediately. So this is like a revenge fantasy, I think, stemming from a feeling of powerlessness that, what are you going to do? I mean, it's your healthcare coverage, not easily come by. I mean, probably one of the more treasured things for Americans is our healthcare coverage, because if you don't have it, you go into and you get sick, you go into incredible debt. So we're going to talk about, or I'm going to talk about coming up a little bit about the reaction and the bizarre reaction of a good deal of the American public. Callous reaction, really.
I want to be clear. At this time, every indication is that this was a premeditated, pre-planned, targeted attack. Millions of people will be enjoying the tree lighting tonight, among other holiday events, and the NYPD will be out there with them, keeping them safe. For some preliminary details about today's tragic incident, I pass it over to our Chief of Detectives, Chief Joe Kenny.
So a lot of this is about the Rockefeller tree lighting that happened, which is just an event, a Christmas event that a lot of tourists come in for. Rockefeller Center is one of our more beautiful landmarks, incredible building, glamorous building. We have this huge tree every year that we light up. So I think they were worried that there was going to be some act of violence there.
Thank you, Commissioner. The information I'm about to give you is preliminary, as our investigation is continuing. This morning at 6:46 a.m., patrol officers from Midtown North Precinct responded to a 911 call of a person shot in front of the Hilton Hotel located at 1335 Avenue of the Americas. This is between West 53rd Street and West 54th Street. At 6:48 a.m., officers arrive and find the victim, Brian R. Thompson, a 50-year-old male, on the sidewalk in front of the Hilton with gunshot wounds to his back and leg. Mr. Thompson was removed by EMS to Roosevelt Hospital, where he was pronounced dead at 7:12 a.m. Mr. Thompson is the CEO of UnitedHealthcare and resides in Minnesota. Detectives from Night Watch, Midtown North Detective Squad, and Manhattan South Homicide respond.
That's another thing, is how this shooter knew his schedule and knew he was going to be staying at that hotel. I mean, I know he's speaking to his shareholders there, but I mean, how do you know he's going to be walking down the street and identifying him in the dark. I mean, I guess. So there's been some talk of him getting some inside information. I don't think so. I think he was clever and somehow pulled it out of someone.
Responded to the scene and began their investigation. What we know is that the shooter arrived at the location on foot about 5 minutes prior to the victim's arrival. He stands alongside the building line as numerous other people and pedestrians pass him by. From video, we see at 6:44 a.m., the victim is walking alone towards the Hilton after exiting his hotel across the street. We believe the victim was headed to the Hilton Hotel to attend the United Health Group Investors Conference that was scheduled to start at 8 a.m. The shooter appears to be a light-skinned male. He's wearing a light brown or cream-colored jacket, a black face mask, black...
So how does he know he's going to show up at like 6:30 in the morning for an 8 a.m. conference? And by 8 a.m., that's a really busy part of Manhattan. And usually a part of Manhattan where you see a lot of cops. Very risky.
White sneakers and a very distinctive gray backpack. The shooter steps onto the sidewalk from behind the car. He ignores numerous other pedestrians, approaches the victim from behind, and shoots him in the back. The shooter then walks toward the victim and continues to shoot. It appears that the gun malfunctions as he clears the jam and begins to fire again. The shooter then flees on foot northbound into an alleyway between 54th Street and 55th Street. Once at West 55th, the shooter continues to walk westbound on Avenue of the Americas, where he gets onto an electric E-City bike and rides northbound on the Avenue of Americas towards Central Park, where at 6:48 a.m. we have the shooter riding this bike into Central Park at Center Drive. At the scene, we recover 3 live 9mm rounds and 3 discharged 9mm shell casings. The motive for this murder currently is unknown, but based on the evidence we have so far, it does appear that the victim was specifically targeted. But at this point, we do not know why. This does not appear to be a random act of violence. We are seeking information from the public to help identify the shooter. As the commissioner said, we have upped the reward up to $10,000 for information. You're urged to contact Crime Stoppers at 1-800-577-TIPS.
So my first thought was maybe with all the anger, I mean, that's essentially the rundown. They go into the tree and answering some questions that pretty much have been answered in our media, but that'll give you an idea of what happened. They're now searching the Central Park lake for his gun.
Police releasing these brand new images of the suspected killer in the back of a taxi cab. They're urging police and people to be on the lookout and contact police with any information that could lead to an arrest. Let's go to News Nation's correspondent Caitlin Becker, who is live in Central Park. Caitlin, you've been following these latest developments all day, and it really centers around the lake, which we see right there behind you. What's happening at this hour?
So they think he may have dropped his gun in this lake in the middle of Central Park. So they're diving for it.
Yeah, Alex, as you mentioned, the search for the killer has left New York City, but the search for the murder weapon is happening right now behind me in Central Park for the second day in a row. NYPD scuba divers are in this lake, kind of right near the surface here and right near the edge, scouring the bottom in kind of an underwater grid search, looking for this murder weapon. They've actually spent a pretty significant amount of time in this one area right here, going in circles. You can see fins and bubbles, them sort of kicking around, and they're going with their hands at the bottom to try to find anything they can there, while the other 2 officers stand here. There's a rope that they're attached to help with that grid search. Every 30 minutes or so, probably because it's pretty cold in there, they come back out, switch out, and then go back in. And it's been happening now, Alex, for a couple of hours. So far, they haven't turned anything up yet. But what they're looking for is, of course,
So that noise you hear behind her is just from reporting on the scene. Sometimes there's dancers and musicians in Central Park, and you can just hear it blaring from behind her, or I can with my headphones.
This rare gun that police believe was used in this crime, it was a long barrel gun with a suppressor on the edge of that, on the outside of that. Suppressor is very similar to what we're calling a silencer. We saw that used at the crime in that very terrifying surveillance footage. Now, what investigators are operating on the assumption here is that when the killer ditched his backpack, he may have also ditched the murder weapon. That backpack was recovered on Friday, not far from where I'm standing right here in the park. So we're right by famous Bethesda Fountain. The boathouse is behind me. There are dozens of people nearby, all stopping to see what in the world is going on in the water behind me. So a lot of activity going on here, but as I said, not far from where they found that backpack. And of course, we know now the contents of that backpack were a Tommy Hilfiger jacket and a bunch of Monopoly money. And so that, of course, is pointing again to indications that this has a lot to do.
So one of the theories, because when you don't know much, CNN went with a story that it was a veterinarian gun, but I think it's been since that theory has been thrown away. There's also been theories that this is really a woman, but I think you can see his Adam's apple in the one picture pretty clearly that I think it's a man. I may be proved wrong, but certainly statistically, men commit these kind of crimes much more often than women do. But they ran with this story that because of the silencer, that it was this kind of gun. It is a very rare kind of gun.
With the health insurance industry, and that may be a motive as to why Thompson was targeted, Alex.
Absolutely fascinating to hear the contents of that backpack. That's new information that you're bringing to us right now. That's News Nation's Caitlin Becker. Thank you so much for joining us.
I mean, don't you think that the Monopoly money is that he knew he was going to be found? And it's kind of like it has to be a comment on it, because it's not useful, right? So it has to be a comment on either healthcare and the prices of healthcare, or the amount of money the CEO was making, or something related to the crime. Like it might as well be Monopoly money because nobody can afford it. I don't know. What do you guys think?
Let's discuss this further. Bringing in former FBI Special Agent Stuart Kaplan. Stuart, thanks for coming on here today on this busy Sunday. Let's talk a little bit about what Caitlin's reporting there. The fact that we are seeing NYPD officers going with scuba teams into that body of water. Now, these are mutually exclusive police activities. We can simultaneously go into the water to search for a murder weapon while still continuing the efforts to actually find that suspect, right?
That is.
So, it could be the amount of money that it costs, for whatever life-saving measure or important measure that was denied by UnitedHealthcare, or it could be someone was saying in the chat that it could be a red herring. You just don't know. But I'm fascinated. Anybody else fascinated by this? I'm like glued. We'll get back to the regular subjects soon. I know that there's like some new motions and one new motion in Donna Adelson's hearing.
That's correct. I mean, look, I equate this to a box, a puzzle box. Within the box are fragments of evidence that if you put all the fragments of the evidence together, it should resemble the picture on the box itself. Sometimes we don't have that picture on the outside of the box. Sometimes we work backwards. In this particular case, we know it's a homicide. We know how the individual was killed. We're now taking all of these little fragments that we believe are relevant, and we want to exhaust logical leads. So let me also suggest the New York City Police Department, with its counterparts, federal and state and local law enforcement, probably has released less than 50% of the information that is presently known to the police department. And that includes...
Well, a lot of those leads are going to be 90% of those leads are going to be bum leads. I mean, this guy looks like generic millennial, guy. So he's going to look like anybody's neighbor, friend, whatever, especially from the limited viewing we have of his face. So I'm sure there's going to be false leads all over the place, but it has been reported that they have ID'd him. Some people are reporting that. Other people are saying other people are not going that far. Other news outlets aren't going that far and saying that they're only progressing well with their investigation. Mayor Adams came out and said, I'm not going to say, we can't say whether we ID'd him or not. We're not going to give him a running start and let him know that we're out to find him. So
includes eyewitness statements, CCTV recordings, DNA evidence, latent fingerprints evidence, and of course, maybe the treasure trove of all is the cell phone digital footprints that they may have. So they're putting all of this together. I will suggest, and I will...
Right, because it looked like he was talking on a cell phone right before the crime. So if he kept that cell phone, if it wasn't a burner cell phone, if they can follow where that cell phone pinged off of, speaking of Dan Markel's, that crime, that's how they solved that. So
he threw away a burner cell phone.
He threw away the burner cell phone, my boyfriend's saying. So yeah, so that's not helpful. But boy, do I laugh when I heard, like, I don't know if it was Vinnie Politan or someone else saying, like, okay, you just matched the DNA. If it were only that simple.
Given the breadth of this investigation and now being worked in concert with the FBI, I think they have a pretty good idea of who they're looking for. It's just a question of trying to flush them out.
Thanks for watching. Go to joinnn.com.
Okay, so I thought this was so continuing on from the DNA, the DNA not being helpful. One person said it.
A manhunt is entering.
So News Nation did some really good reporting on this. Strangely, usually they're terrible.
We're going to
reveal his face. We're going to reveal who he is, and we're going to bring him to justice.
Investigators
The
searching
investigation
for the
already
gunman
includes a
killed
significant amount.
Oh, let me fix that on a break, and I'll let me fix that. I'm going to take a quick break, fix it, and I'll be back in a minute. Don't go anywhere.
A glass of wine. Roberta will be back in no time. This podcast is listener supported, so smash that like button and subscribe, or become a patron for exclusive content if you are so inclined. Have something to say? Shoot Roberta a super chat. She will do her best to read it on air without delay. Now Roberta's back and ready to put the true back in true crime. Here's Roberta.
All right. Let me just tap dance a little while I fix this. How is everybody? Because I really want you to see this. I thought this was one of the better reporting on this. And I don't know what happened with the audio, why it's so odd. But let me just redo it, and I can get it up for you guys as soon as possible. This is going to take 1 minute. 1 minute. But basically, this one was like, DNA is not going to solve this. I was like, thank you. Thank you. Finally. Finally, the voice of reason here. So I'm just going to download a better copy, and it will be up in one second. These are the fun things that happen when you're live. It's like a high wire act, a little bit. So, okay, let me throw that out. And I'm also trying to not crowd. Like yesterday, I was live, and so much of my stuff was getting, my computer was freezing. Here we go.
Don't want to release that now. If you do, you're basically giving a tip to the person we're seeking, and we do not want to give him an upper hand at all. Let him continue to believe he can hide behind a mask. We're going to, just as we revealed his face, we're going to reveal who he is, and we're going to bring him to justice.
This is our Mayor Adams, who's now facing fraud charges. There's also a conspiracy theory around it that he went against Biden and his immigration policy, and that's why they're charging him with these fraud charges. But he took all sorts of money from Turkey. That's what they're alleging. It's a federal case. He's fighting, and he's staying in office. He's insisting staying in office through this, refusing to step down.
The investigation already includes a significant amount of physical evidence. The bullet casings with the words deny, defend, depose inscribed, leading to speculation the motive is linked to the insurance industry. Late Friday, an extensive...
So my apologies. Did I say delay? I think delay is actually the book. So deny, defend, depose on the... Were there other messages written on those bullets? Curious to know.
Drone and foot search of Central Park located another key piece of evidence, the distinctive gray backpack worn by the killer as he executed UnitedHealthcare CEO Brian Thompson.
So when you depose someone, you depose them, they take a deposition of someone. It's often done in a civil lawsuit. And that's where you would sue for denial. It wouldn't be a criminal case. It would be a civil case. So if there was some denial of service that caused someone's life, then you sued, then you would have, everybody would be deposed who's involved in the lawsuit, including people who work at UnitedHealthcare, possibly the CEO.
The backpack is now at a crime lab for forensic testing, and police have not revealed what was inside, in particular, whether the murder weapon was inside. But the item which made the bag appear full was reportedly the hooded jacket worn by the killer. Meantime, with the reward now at $60,000, hundreds of tips are coming in about the suspect as police continue to search Central Park and pour through hundreds of hours of surveillance.
The manner in which they were able to follow his footsteps to recover evidence, some of it is known, some of it is unknown, but the net is tightening, and we're going to bring this person to justice.
Now, this bus terminal accommodates multiple lines, including Greyhound, and we have learned that all Greyhound buses are equipped with cameras. So it's likely investigators know where the suspect was headed, as Mayor Adams alluded to. Police and the FBI may be closing in. Natasha?
Yeah, we shall see. Nancy Liu in New York City tonight. Thank you. And let's bring in News Nation national security contributor, former FBI special agent and CIA officer Tracy Walder. Tracy, always good to see you. Thanks for making the time.
Thank you for having me.
Right. This is the Tracy Walder who's seems to be one of the few that's like making sense in this. Actually saying something useful. Thank you, Tracy Walder. She's like, they're not going to get much from the backpack. They're not going to get much. This is not a DNA case. Very few cases are solved with DNA, guys. I think I've read as high as 18% and as low as 8%, depending on the crime.
So we're looking at these details. Authorities now have the burner phone, the water bottle he may have dropped. They are testing for DNA on that backpack. What is standing out to you at this point in the investigation and the manhunt?
So I know people may come for me for this, but I'm actually not convinced that the backpack will yield a whole lot as well as DNA. Part of the issue with that is once they have the DNA, it actually becomes very time consuming to process for a couple reasons. The first issue is that the state of New York, unless you have actually been convicted of a crime, your DNA is not going to be in the system. So that is going to be problematic. They can start doing familial or genealogical DNA, which is how they found Brian Kohberger, but that process can take, 3 weeks to a month as well. And so I'm actually not convinced that DNA is how they are going to catch this individual. I think it's going to be through the video canvassing as well as possibly his phone.
Yeah, it looks like police have deployed a dive.
And just good old-fashioned police work. That's how most crimes are solved. I know the CSI effect is in full force, but let's get real here. I don't think they're going to get anything from his phone. So then, he thought of all this. So then you're really limited to the tipsters are going to be huge. And that's why they went out on the offensive and started offering reward money immediately. And the FBI is involved.
Team in the fountains in Central Park. What would they be searching for?
I believe if they've deployed a dive team, they are most likely looking for the murder weapon. That would be the most likely place that he would have really tossed that aside, typically because obviously water is difficult to find things in, and it would wipe off any fingerprints. If you noticed in the video that they have of him killing Mr. Thompson, he does not have gloves on. And so this is an individual that, in my opinion, knew he was going to be able to throw away that weapon and not have fingerprints on it.
Let's talk about the level of expertise and planning here. I mean, according to Thompson's wife, the CEO had been...
Let's talk about how difficult it's going to be to prove this guy did this crime. This is going to be a challenge to prosecute. If they don't find the gun, will a jury convict? And on what? Because, I've been talking about how when people are on film doing these crimes, the Innocence Project has been, with their own, what I consider junk science, saying, oh no, there's a height difference between the guy in film and the guy in real life. There was a guy in Ann Arbor, Michigan that was let out by a DA, one of these progressive DAs, not funded by the Open Society Foundation, just ideologically aligned. And they let out a guy who was ID'd by his father. They found the clothes he was wearing on film doing the crime. So his father saw him on TV and was like, that's my son. And they let him out because they said the father had a bone to pick because they didn't have a great relationship. Imagine someone doing this kind of crime, having a bone to pick with their son. It's just absurd. They let out another guy to a lot of fanfare. And then while he was out with the same kind of height difference between, I believe Bob Ruff did a couple episodes on it. So Bob Ruff is thinks that basically anybody's convicted of anything. He's never met a guilty person who's been convicted of anything. And that guy got married, was so celebrated his case because of this height think there was a documentary on his case because of this new height difference thing. And then while he was out awaiting a new trial, he gets nabbed for substance use. And his wife, I think she was from Australia or Canada, divorced him. By the way, Lyle Menendez is getting a divorce. He's been unfaithful to his wife in prison. This is his second prison divorce. While we're on this subject, he's been flirting with all his new fans.
Getting threats. Does this look like a professional hit job to you, or an amateur with a grudge?
I think both, Natasha. I'm sorry to sound ambiguous about that. I think the first thing is, a lot of people are talking about how this individual was some kind of high.
George Powell is who I'm talking about, by the way. George Powell, very celebrated case. Guy gets out on the height difference. So, it's going to be a challenge to convict this guy and to keep the conviction.
Trained assassin, and this is what this person did for a living. I don't think that. I think if that was the case, this individual would have hit Mr. Thompson initially. He really wasn't that far from center mass, and he missed that first shot. And so that tells me that this is someone that has clearly trained with a weapon, but is not some kind of highly trained assassin. However, to write that on the bullet casings, to be in New York City 10 days before Mr. Thompson was there, to know what hotel he was going to be at, this really did take a high level of planning.
What do you think the motive may have been here?
My gut says it has to do with insurance. So it has to do with a lack of coverage, a lack of providing being done by the insurance company. Maybe someone close to this individual was denied services and was denied life-saving coverage. Maybe this individual was, I don't know. But I do think that it had to do with denial of coverage.
Yeah, I agree. I agree with the FBI. I mean, it's a no-brainer, right? Brian M. says, can they approximate height based on full body images, 5'7" to 5'9"? I don't believe they can. I believe this is junk science. That's my belief. Because I believe this is just a way, they want as many people out as possible, because what they do after they get them out, the Innocence Project wrongful conviction movement, is they sue for wrongful conviction, and they get sometimes multi-million-dollar payouts. There was just one recently in Philadelphia, $4.1 million. And taxpayers pay out these civil claims. So they'll sue the city, sue the state for wrongful conviction. So they want as many people out. They need as many clients as they can. They're not fussy. So this is just their latest grift, in my opinion. So no, I don't believe you really can, Brian, do it. That's just my belief. I don't know. That's my belief.
Tracy Walder, appreciate you as always. Thank you so much. Thanks for watching. Go to joinnn.com to find.
Release that.
Hey, Dean Walker, nice to see you. Thanks for the super sticker. And thank you, Brian. I get kind of cranky when I talk about this. It's just so obvious. These cases are just one more obvious than the next. I mean, I'd really like to see a more complicated case, maybe a closer case, maybe a case that maybe makes me really scratch my head. From the wrongful conviction movement, they've just been getting bolder and bolder with who they're representing. I mean, Scott Peterson, anyone? Can we say? Let's see, what else? There's interesting. So let's talk about some of the anger at the health industry that this has brought up. Before I let me just bring up that video real quick. But before I do, hold on one sec. I just want to show you Twitter. So if you bring up Brian Thompson's name, here's a few of the reactions. And This, my mother called me about this case, not interested in true crime at all, and is fascinated by this because our healthcare is such a mess here. But apparently, if I ever wondered why it's so difficult to do a victim-centered podcast, this should give me a few clues, because the callous reaction from the public, I think they put it up on Facebook, the announcement of this crime. It was like 45,000 laughy faces. So Fleo says on X or Twitter, Brian Thompson, the CEO of UnitedHealthcare, is burning in hell right now. If you think billionaires and millionaires are going to heaven, you haven't been reading your Bible. Here's one with SpongeBob by Gardner. Brian Thompson was a man with a family and people who loved him. CEOs are people too. Just because he denied people life-saving health insurance doesn't mean it's okay for someone to kill him. So that you're a bootlicker if you say that. And worse. So that's just some of the anger that the public has had towards our healthcare industry that's being expressed. So this guy is becoming sort of like the subway vigilante Gates a little bit with this crime, oddly. Find it really strange. Hey, Angela Whittick. Thanks for being a member for 6 months. So this was an interesting piece of media footage just about the anger from the public and talking a little bit more about the case. Let's take a look.
UnitedHealthcare CEO Brian Thompson was gunned down in New York, and that massive manhunt is still underway for his killer in what police are calling a calculated and premeditated attack. In a new statement, the UnitedHealthcare Group says this, quote, "While our hearts are broken, we have been touched by the huge outpouring of kindness and support in the hours since this horrific crime took place. But this killing has generated a very different reaction from some on the internet. Just take a look at some of these comments found under a CNN video about this story online. These are just a few among dozens of hateful comments that we found, including one saying, quote, "Sorry, my sympathy is out of network." The New York Times writes this, quote, "The dark commentary after the death of the 50-year-old insurance executive from Maple Grove, Minnesota, highlighted the anger and frustration over the state of healthcare in America, where those with private insurance often find themselves in Kafkaesque tangles while seeking reimbursement for medical treatment and are often denied." And that frustration is something that doctors say they've seen from patients throughout their careers.
I see people when they're at their lowest, when the system has failed them, and I'm frankly not surprised. They feel abandoned, they feel exploited, they feel lied to when it comes to the healthcare system, and especially insurances, because of the things you mentioned, denials, prior authorization, narrow networks, the cost of healthcare. It's been going on and bottling up for a long time.
So our panel's back. Annie Linsky, we're going to be clear here about the tragedy that is.
This was an interesting tweet that I left out. Hold on 1 second. Let me just share my screen. All right, I think I just froze my computer. Hold on 1 second, guys. My apologies.
Don't worry.
Thank you for your patience. Boy, it is frustrating. Let me just pull up. Let me pull up because I thought this was a really interesting message on Twitter. Probably one of the more interesting ones. And I should have brought it up last time. I regret that I didn't bring it up with all those angry, insensitive messages. Here it is. From the hijabi gamer. I'm going to say something controversial about Brian Thompson. You know, the CEO of UnitedHealthcare who was just killed? I emailed him when I was having trouble with my claim. His office contacted me multiple times. I had problems and his office helped fix it. They actually couldn't just reverse it, but still had to go through things, but they fixed it. Health insurance is crap. I'll say my words, not his. People are denied care who need it, and people are given coverage for ridiculous things. Hundreds of thousands of dollars so a woman can stand to pee. But the CEO read my 2 emails and sent people from his office to help me. I can't deny that. So just an interesting story about Brian Thompson, as people are saying that he's so terrible and insensitive, and how could he have a job like this? He made too much money. He made $10 million a year. That's not just his salary. That's just, believe, estimated with the amount of his stock that he was given, etc. But just something to keep in mind. So let me just get back to where we move forward.
The dark commentary found under a CNN video about this story online. These are just a few, among dozens of hateful comments that we found, including one saying, quote, "Sorry, my sympathy is out of network." The New York Times writes this, quote, "The dark commentary after the death of the 50-year-old insurance executive from Maple Grove, Minnesota, highlighted the anger and frustration over the state of healthcare in America, where those with private insurance often find themselves in Kafkaesque tangles while seeking reimbursement for medical treatment and are often denied." And that frustration is something that doctors say they've seen from patients throughout their careers.
I see people when they're at their lowest, when the system has failed them, and I'm frankly not surprised. They feel abandoned, they feel exploited, they feel lied to when it comes to the healthcare system, and especially insurances, because of the things you mentioned: denials, prior authorization, narrow networks, the cost of healthcare. It's been going on and bottling up for a long time.
So our panel's back. Annie Linsky, we're going to be clear here about.
I mean, some people are paying more in healthcare than they're paying in rent here in New York City. I mean, it is outrageous. Obamacare was supposed to fix this. I mean, I guess you could argue maybe more people are covered under Medicaid because of Obamacare, but generally, it just seemed to drive up the prices.
The tragedy that is Mr. Thompson and his family, right? And set that aside. But what we do see in the wake of this is an outpouring of anger around the way people have been treated by these companies. Now, we're again going to be clear. We are not saying that this justifies any sort of violence at all. But this conversation has really exploded. I mean, my family's talking about it.
Absolutely, mine is too. I mean, of course, vigilante justice is not the answer to the problem. But what I should say is, and this incident and the reaction to it ought to be a wake-up call to this industry, which has, there have been many big, really good investigative pieces about UnitedHealthcare in particular, and the issues that their customers have in getting the healthcare that's promised, getting the responses promised, and if it's not it's not a wake-up call to the industry, it certainly will be to Congress, and they are going to have there will be laws.
In a CNN story that was just published about this, they note that a Facebook post that was put up by UnitedHealth Group expressing sadness about the CEO's death, it received 62,000 reactions, I'm 57,000 of them were laughing emojis.
I mean, that's sad to think about, but look at this. I mean, and you're right. Most of these healthcare issues are life or death. And I have a sick dad home in Louisiana, and we go to the doctor all the time, and sometimes we get denied for things. And it doesn't feel good, you know? And so I think people have a personal issue with the way their healthcare has been administered. And I think, to your point, Annie, over the next few weeks, few months, we're going to have a conversation about this. If Congress has to take action, I think they will have to, but we hope that these private companies can come to the table and be a little bit more consistent in the way they administer healthcare. I think that would be helpful.
We know UnitedHealthcare has already been the focal point of ire for Congress because it's vertically integrated. They're buying up doctors' offices. They own the largest PBM, which controls the price of prescription drugs in the country. They're the most aggressive on denying claims. I think UnitedHealthcare will get more scrutiny.
Yeah, and of course we don't know the motivation yet of this killer. We just know that these two words were found on these bullet casings.
But let's advance to New York.
Yep.
So he gets here somewhere around the 24th, and
Of November.
Right.
Yep.
So now let's establish that puts him here a lot longer than we believed he would.
So what are you doing? The longer you're in the city, the more likely that you're going to be photographed on CCTV footage, the more likely someone's going to remember you. Why did he have to come in so early? What was he doing? I mean, you visit the scene, and how long does that take? 10 days? Was this a crime vacation? I mean, what was going on?
Was here just 24 hours ago before they developed this information. He checks into this hostel, which we've been up to on the Upper West Side, and he's assigned to a room where he has these two roommates. So it's a room for four, but he's the third person there. He talks to the clerk at the desk, and, they are chatting back and forth, and, she's kind of having a flirty moment with him and says,
That's when the smile happens?
"Let me see your face. Take down your mask." And he lowers the mask and gives that big smile. That little flirtation between the two of them in some good-humored way actually yielded what is so.
Right. Some people are wondering, apparently there was some reports that he ate with his mask on. He only lowered it to put a fork of food in his mouth. But there you are, you're forced at the front desk to either look really suspicious or look human and risk having your face photographed. And obviously he did the latter. But that every other time he's wearing a mask. I mean, it's another discussion to discuss what these mask mandates did as far as crime. I know California was debating that issue as to whether you could say you can't have. I know that whose celebrity's kid was talking about that recently. It was Jennifer Garner's and Ben Affleck's kid. Right, was speaking out against getting rid of the, banning masks because of the issue with crime, that it really is a good way to help criminals get away with their crimes.
So far, the most significant clue to identifying him. He checks out of the hostel after a couple of days and then checks back in. They have not established, investigators, according to people briefed on this investigation, where he was during that kind of odd day. Did he try to find another place? They have established by kind of starting out at the hostel every day and doing a video canvas that attempts to recreate his trail each of those days, that the first place he goes is the Hilton Hotel, way before the night of the murder. So that suggests from the moment he gets off the bus, he knows about this conference. He wants to do that reconnaissance. So this is how they're kind of learning more about the length of time he was here.
Yeah.
He takes taxis. He goes to a McDonald's. He's using this fake
Wearing
New
his
Jersey
mask all
driver's
the time.
license. Mask got put up. And I mean, Aaron, when you say wearing his mask all the time, the whole object of the game is, where is that weak moment where he thinks, nobody knows I'm here, nobody's looking at me, where he takes down the hood and the mask at the same time, and they haven't found that yet.
Out front now, Mateos Taranto. He was staying in the same hostel on the same floor where police believe the suspected shooter stayed. And Mateos, I really appreciate your time. I mean,
What are you going to do? Grab him in the shower? You know, unless you're going to shower with it on. But I mean, who's going to take a picture of you then? So I guess you rely on the verbal IDs and sketch artists to recreate, did they have hair? What did it look like, etc. But we have a pretty good idea of what his face looked like.
What a bizarre situation you find yourself in. I know you're visiting from Brazil. You've been staying in the hostel. You've met some people there. Can we just start with some of the photos you took on the 4th floor of the hostel where you were staying, where where police say he was staying? Can you tell us anything about that? What it's like in there? What those halls look like?
All right, so the hostel is actually really crowded. There are a lot of people there, so they divide like rooms to, I think, 4 to 10 people. But in the
4
hallway,
to 10 people in one room.
Yeah, 4 to 10 or 12, 4 to 12, yeah. So the hallway is just simple. It's just the doors that goes to the rooms, the shared rooms. That's it. That's pretty simple. How the hallways look.
So it would seem from what you're saying that if he was staying on that floor, as they believe he was, that he would have had other people in the room.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
Okay, so now you've been staying there for about a week.
Yeah.
And you're talking about these rooms that you got 4 to 12 people in a room.
Yeah.
So from what you're saying, he would have had other people in the room.
Yeah.
How hard would it have been to, as you see it, to even do something like to have a gun in there or something like that?
I mean, it would be that hard, like if he put on like his luggage or something, because there's no metal detector. There's nothing like that.
There's no metal detector, and also just to give you an idea, let's just go back to the hostel. There's these, you can have privacy, so you're not out in full view. When you're sleeping, you can have these little curtains that go over your bed. So that'll give you some idea, right? I mean, just one more look at it. So 10 bed dorm, or 12 if he was in a 12. That's more open, but that looks like the all gender area because it's pink, formerly known as the women's area. So forget traveling easily if you're a woman. So depends on what kind of area it was at, but most looks like, or here it's sort of, they have curtains here. This is like private. It depends on what kind of area he was in. I think I would guess he was in the 10. If I had to guess, he was in the 10 bed dorm, because in some ways that's a little bit more private, no? Than certainly the 12 or the 14, because the 14 bed dorm doesn't look like it has any of those curtains. So back to the guy at the hostel.
So I think just go inside and it will be all good.
So he could have had something like that. In terms of seeing him, do you recall seeing, now you've seen his picture out there and you talk about the hostel being so crowded, do you recall seeing anybody that looked like him?
Yeah, I didn't recall anyone looking like that. And people are saying that he always using the mask. So even if I saw him, I wouldn't recognize him, because he was always wearing the mask.
Right, and obviously, as you were there those few days,
Oh, Chevy Canfer says the CEO was valedictorian of his high school. Interesting. And was well liked. All this deny and depose could just be misdirection for a mundane motive like love or money, or some kind of ideology. connected with CEOs, and he went to healthcare CEOs just because maybe he read that book. I would be surprised if he hadn't or heard of that book. Deny, Delay, Defend, I think it's called.
You talk about the situation. There's no security. There's no, and
there's
lots of people coming and going.
There's like basic security there. Yeah, there's a security like you can't go inside without a card, so we have to check in to go inside. But like gun control doesn't have any. So yeah, that kind of security is none.
Right, right. And in terms, just out of curiosity, but when you pay, you can pay credit, cash,
Yeah,
in terms
yeah,
of
whatever. Yeah,
any way you want to pay.
yeah.
All right. Well, I mean, it is really fascinating, but also important, as you say, that he would have probably had a lot of other people in the room.
Yeah,
where he was
yeah.
sleeping.
I think his room probably like had 4 to 6 people, but I'm not sure because I didn't get to come in there. It was locked. But the day that I arrived, there are a lot of cops there. People saw him. No, people saw the cops there outside the room. But yeah, everyone that was inside the room just went to another room, and I don't know who these people were. Like I asked around, and they didn't know anyone.
Right. All right. Well, Mateos, thank you very much. I appreciate it.
There's surveillance.
So it doesn't seem like he had much interaction with anyone in his room, but the cops were right there. I mean, I was just really impressed with how quickly they ran this down and found out where he was staying. Shocking. But there's been other reports that he came from the F train, which doesn't go on the Upper West Side. So he might have left his hostel early and done something else. I don't know. But certainly the F train goes not that way.
Video of the shooting itself with the alleged gunman wearing a mask. Newly released video of what appears to be the man fitting the description of the suspect, walking in the area of the killing on Wednesday morning. Video of what could be the suspect on an e-bike on the west side of Manhattan. New photos of a so-called person of interest wearing a hooded jacket but no mask, which CNN has geolocated to a Manhattan hostel where police believe the suspect may have stayed. Crucial images which are among the many resources being used by the NYPD to catch the suspect in the murder of UnitedHealthcare CEO Brian Thompson.
NYPD and the FBI have a great ability to pull together video surveillance and piece it together moment by moment by moment and follow somebody through any camera available. And that's what the goal is first, is from the incident, every moment after that, every moment before that, can we see this individual?
CNN is told there's facial recognition technology being used. The NYPD's Joint Operations Center is being utilized to deploy field teams and analyze the video coming in. Law enforcement experts tell us another resource police have will help them trace and possibly match the bullet shell casings left at the scene. A shell and a live round with the words delay and depose written on them, reflecting popular phrases in the insurance industry. To analyze the shells, experts say they'll use the ATF's NIBIN system. NIBIN standing for National Integrated Ballistic Information Network, which helps them match shell casings with other crime scenes. There are other physical resources to analyze.
Right. Also, through the purchase of the gun, they could try to track him down that way. But what does geolocate mean? They geolocated him to the hostel. Does anyone know what that means? Geolocate? How you geolocate someone?
DNA from a phone and a bottle of water, which may have been dropped by the suspect.
That can possibly hold physical evidence, including fingerprints, but also pieces of hair or something else that would disclose who this person might be.
There's video of the suspect just minutes before the shooting, buying water and energy bars at a Starbucks, providing the police with human assets and other resources.
How did he make that purchase? Who saw him? Who interacted with him? And what did he do electronically that might have paid for those if he paid cash?
Witnesses at the hostel where the gunman may have stayed could be a critical resource.
But also at the hostel, who interacted with him?
Well, early reports was that he paid cash for everything.
What did he sound like? Did he have an accent? Did he sound like he was from the Midwest or from the East Coast?
Another important resource tonight, police going back in time to Thompson's recent background.
So what was happening in Brian Thompson's world in terms of the threats that we're hearing about, things that the company was worried about, statements made by his widow now about the threats that he was.
Right. His widow says that he was getting threats. So other people have said that it could be his wife for insurance money. CNN went with a guest who said that he had, oh my gosh, there's so much, when there's not a lot of information, they run with the dumbest stuff that he had hired, that Brian Thompson had hired someone to end his life so his kids and his wife could get insurance money. I mean, it had to be one of the dumber things. But other people have said that the wife may have hired someone to do this. I mean, come on.
Facing.
Yeah, what movie was that? This is my boyfriend.
Former FBI official Catherine Schweitz says one key resource for law enforcement tonight is the alleged gunman's circle of family and friends. Now, even though we don't know his identity yet, she says someone in that circle likely knows about his grievances with UnitedHealthcare and could well step forward to help law enforcement tonight. Wolf.
CNN security correspondent and former FBI agent Josh Campbell, as well as retired NYPD detective Tom Verney. Josh, the words delay and depose were found on a live round.
Debbie Martin saying that they lived in different townhouses. Other people saying that they were separated. Ex-widow, they weren't together. Interesting. And that the child support was ending as the child support was ending. So the kids have been separated because the kids are coming of age. But it seems like you would hire a better professional than that, not a young kid, right? Going to Starbucks, getting energy bars.
And a shell casing, pointing to a popular phrase thought to be used in the insurance industry, the health insurance industry, delayed, denied, defend. How does getting a motive nailed down in a case like this work?
Well, this is interesting because it may have been a mistake that the shooter left behind a water bottle and a phone, but it is not a mistake that there are these words that are written on the shell casings, because when a gun is fired, the bullet comes out the front, the shell casing is ejected. And as you mentioned, he actually wrote some of those words on there that are associated with, critics of the insurance industry. And so that could lead to this motive, that perhaps this was someone who had some type of grievance against this healthcare insurance company and was literally leaving behind the motivation for others to find. Now, of course, behind the scenes, investigators would no doubt be working to see what type of threats may have been made against this insurance company, perhaps against the CEO himself. I was talking with a former senior security director at another competing insurance company who said they used to get threats all the time from people who had a bad dealing with the company, and that then boils over into actually doing threats. So I'm sure that they would be looking into those. But of course, finally, Jake, this is one particular theory, and there's a danger.
Right. So if you're heading up any organization that's famous, you're going to get threats. And that's what Gavin DeBecker does, is he developed a whole system that can tell you if it's a threat that should be paid attention to or not, how serious the threats are. And it's a whole kind of list of different things. And language. It's a whole system. It's
danger in law enforcement that you get tunnel vision and start excluding other potential theories. I personally think that in this case, if this was indeed some type of personal dispute, what better way to try to, shield that than to make it look like a disgruntled claimant? So at this point, all options on the table for law enforcement.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Tom, do you think it's more likely that the person, the murderer, did this because the murderer had a motivation, or was somebody hired by somebody with a motivation?
Yeah. Well, I mean, look, first, my condolences to the Thompson family. What a horrible thing to be going through, especially this time of the year, the holidays on top of us. And, there's theories about this individual being a hired hitman. versus some sort of disgruntled, troubled person with a firearm, which is too commonplace here in the United States, as we've all seen, right? So, the thing is, with leaving so many clues behind, I mean, the thing that caught me was in the beginning of the video, the person is taking sort of a shooting stance, almost a combat stance, that those of us in law enforcement or in the military are trained to take to get the proper sight alignment with the weapon to make sure that the bullet is reaching its proper destination, right? But then to the immediate right, there's someone standing right there, and then to the immediate left, there's someone in a parked SUV. So to be using the silencer sort of it doesn't really make much sense if you're doing this, in front of maybe a handful of people. So.
Right. I mean, that person pretty much witnessed it. Is that the driver or? But I mean, this is why the mob kills in public, because who wants to confront that guy with a big gun?
If this was a hired hitman, I don't know if he was hired through Craigslist versus Indeed, because he's already left a lot of clues and evidence behind, where a professional hired hitman would have been a ghost, and you never would have saw the person approaching and or leaving, and certainly not just taking a nice bike ride through Midtown Manhattan.
Tom, what do you make of the revelation? Our John Miller just reported that the shooter, or the person of interest rather, used a fake ID to check into that hostel.
Yeah, I mean, that's not surprising. I mean, these, as John had sort of alluded to, these, the fake IDs and or even accessories for guns. You could get just about anything on the internet nowadays. And that's this ongoing argument as far as gun laws and, whether the gun laws should be more restrictive, and what can you get either on the open market or on the internet. And it's not about suppressing people's Second Amendment rights as it is, psychos getting their hands on these weapons and then causing unbelievable damage. Having said that, the location of this shooting in Midtown Manhattan, right by the Hilton, and I'm very familiar with that hotel. I worked in that area for a number of years. I would put people's mind at ease that I don't think there's any immediate danger to the public. This clearly seems.
They always talk about gun laws, and then some of these cities with the strictest gun laws have the worst gun crimes. So I don't know. I haven't done enough research.
Be a targeted attack. And, so now it's just a matter of piecing together anyone in the country, not necessarily New York City, but around the country, that knows someone that may have had some sort of an issue with this particular insurance company and or with this particular CEO. They may have put that out there on their social media. They may have complained about it, about the company and or that person in particular. So those are the people we want to hear from if they know someone that has been complaining.
Right, who looks like this guy. Not my Uncle Harry, who's 75 years old, who looks nothing like this guy, has been complaining about his insurance being denied. I don't know. Do they want to hear from how many people do they want to hear from? Pretty much everyone in America has had a beef with their health care at one time or another. I mean, I'm not sure if this guy knows what he's saying. How many people do the police want to hear from? Because everybody's got a beef here in America with their health coverage and claims being denied at one time or another. I mean,
about that at great length and clearly fits the description of this individual.
Josh, obviously, health insurance company CEOs are not necessarily the most beloved individuals in the world.
Not the most beloved individuals. I don't think it's that they're not beloved as individuals. I love when they say, just say people. Do you have to say individuals? Just say people. What is this individuals thing we have with our language? Anyway, it's just that it's the idea of them. It's not them personally. And so when something personally happens to someone and they take, we are not our jobs, is my point. People are more than their jobs. And to just say that they deserve it because of the job they do, I don't know. I just think it's pretty callous. That's what I have for today, guys. Please hit the thumbs up, subscribe to the channel, share this episode. And I will be back Tuesday at 6 p.m. Eastern. Have a great night, everyone. Thanks for listening.